Continuing with topic 3 of political institutions. We're going to focus on linkage institutions, which includes elections, the media, interest groups, and political parties. So we're going to start with political parties. Again, this is a lot of review from U.S. government. So the function of political parties is, one, to organize and educate the electorate. If you are familiar with the party's platform as a voter or a constituent, and you know that Republicans tend to support tax cuts to try to stimulate economic growth, and that Democrats support government spending for social safety nets, and you like the idea of a social safety net, then it's easy. The Democrats have informed you and educated you that they will provide that with the policy that they make if they ever are in the majority. Mobilizing voters. This is not putting a voter in a car and getting them to the polling booth, even though that can be an aspect of voter mobilization. But voter mobilization is to try to galvanize or excite people about going to vote. Again, these two relate a lot. Providing labels for politicians that make it easy for the voter to choose a candidate. Again, that whole idea of, if I don't know the person specifically and I don't know the candidate's position on certain issues, but they have the D or the R next to their name, then I know. If I know a little bit about the party's platform, that's enough for me to be able to make a decision. One-party system. Our communist states that we study are going to have a one-party system. So this is a party system in which only one political party controls the government, and voters really don't have an option to choose an opposition party. You will see that in China, the Communist Party of China has some political parties, but they fall under the umbrella of the Communist Party. Then you have one-party dominant system. This is a party system in which one large party directs the political system, but small parties exist. So one-party system, there is only one party. They're the ones in control of the government. It's really the only choice voters have. One dominant party is the idea that there are competing parties, but it's not true competition. They really don't have the ability to compete in elections. In non-democratic regimes or in illiberal democracies, you'll see that political systems may allow a small, non-threatening party to exist, but not a true competition. So see this Mexico during most of the 20th centuries when the PRI dominated, or United Russia today, Putin's party. Okay, then we're going to continue with two-party systems. Two-party systems are actually really weird. They're what we have, and we have a set of election rules through the winner-take-all plurality system that we have that kind of perpetuates the two-party system. It's a cycle of, if you have a single-member district and only one person representing one political party can ever win, and the person with the plurality wins and second place gets nothing, makes it very difficult for any other party, a third party, to get any kind of seats in the legislature and be able to fulfill campaign promises. Now, we will be going over electoral systems in the next set of notes, so that will be a review of first past the post, single member district, winner take all, and all of that stuff. All right, 2.5 parties. This is when you have two dominant parties, and then you have a third party, and the third party will influence the outcomes of the elections. So these are kind of like spoilers. You're going to see a 2.5 party system more in the UK. And so again, it's a party system in which the two large parties exist, and a third party receives a smaller amount of the vote, but a notable share. So a third party has seats in the legislature. So you definitely see that with the Conservative Tories, which hold a majority in the UK as of right now in 2018. The Labour Party, which is the second largest party, and then the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems and the Labour Party split votes because they're more to the left of the ideological spectrum. Okay, and then multi-party systems, these are the most common. So this is a political party system with several important political parties. There is no major gain by one political party in the legislature. So none of the political parties in a multi-party system will generally gain a majority of the seats. You'll have a plurality, but then the political parties are forced to work together to get policy passed. So that would be like if you had a 200-seat legislature and you had Party A, had like 80 votes. Party B had 60 votes and Party C had 60 votes. Then in order to get 101 votes to pass legislation, the parties would have to work together. All right. I'm going to animate this real quick. All right, differences between political parties and interest groups. Okay, so these are two separate linkage institutions. Again, one of the major goals of a political party is to win elections so they can write policy within the government. So their members will hold seats in the legislature or hold seats in the executive and be able to actually carry out policy. So they're going to run candidates. Interest groups don't run a candidate for office. There's not technically there's not an NRA candidate. Technically, you wouldn't find an AARP candidate or an NAACP candidate. Rather, what an interest group does is support a candidacy, but they don't run their own candidates. Parties will have a more general, broad platform, where interest groups are going to be much more specific about the policies they want to see passed. So political parties will have a laundry list on their platform of the issues that they want to accomplish or the policy they want to accomplish, whereas interest groups like the NRA, they want to prevent policy that protects, or they want to prevent policy that institutes gun control. The NAACP wants to influence policy that would promote equality in education, like affirmative action. They don't want to write it, though. In a parliamentary system, interest groups, and really, in most of the countries that in the countries that we study in the AP6 and US is really the only of the 7 governments where interest groups have the most influence. In a parliamentary system, interest groups don't really have as much influence over lawmakers because there's so much strength within the party platform, and there's a lot of party loyalty, and party membership means more than interest group membership or interest group influence. So in the U.S., you see situations where our lawmakers tend to be more influenced by interest groups than any of the other countries we study. All right, so next we're going to compare interest groups in an authoritarian regime versus interest groups in democracies. In an authoritarian regime, you may have interest groups, but they're really controlled by the government. In fact, Putin has a group of youth that he uses as agents to extend his platform and his influence. So he kind of has indoctrinated these kids to go out and support his policies, and they are technically an interest group, but they're a pro-Putin interest group, and he can use them to try to brainwash the rest of the country. So what interest groups are often called in authoritarian countries or authoritarian regimes are called transmission belts. Again, it's like the they're a mechanism within the government to just help the government go and help like push the government's message to the masses. In a democracy, we have more of a pluralist system. And remember, pluralism is the idea that it's a positive idea where you have interest groups that compete for influence. No one particular interest group dominates. And interest groups like have the ear, like all different interest groups have the ears of lawmakers. All right. Again, you'll have societal interest groups. So they're going to be groups that represent certain segments of the society. So that would be like the NAACP or the American Legion, the VFW, and the National Organization of Women. So they're representing the interests of a particular demographic of people. In democracies, interest groups membership is voluntary, and not a lot of people are members of interest groups, so they choose not to be. Interest groups have their own. Some interest groups are their own corporations. They have their own leadership structure. They raise their own money. They have their own set of dues. They use their money for campaign donations, or they use their money to provide a service for a certain group of people. But there is, in democracies, a clear separation between the interest group and the government, whereas in an authoritarian regime, the government is using the interest group to further their message to the public. All right, so those are that's going to be political parties and interest groups, part of the political institutions, specifically linkage institutions.